Hey everyone! As I have in the past for upcoming things that I am greatly interested in, like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, I'm going to break down and analyze this trailer for God's Not Dead 3 Tokyo Drift, the existence of which is a Christmas miracle that I willed into existence single-handedly. Now, my all-time favorite movie in this genre is, of course, Suing the Devil, wherein Satan is played by Malcolm McDowell. But it was God's Not Dead, starring Kevin Sorbo, that really kicked this off for me. So even though I was a little let down by God's Not Dead 2, Still Not Dead, I nonetheless hope that God's Not Dead 3 can be a return to absolute batshit form. So let's break this down. So within the opening seconds of the trailer, we hear the dean of this university name a church which we find out has been vandalized and burned to the ground. They chose to go with St. James. St. James was an apostle and the brother of John, and is recognized as the first martyr. So that's what we're doing. Dean Evil Atheist continues on over images of protesters, ruin, and dramatic explosions, explicitly saying this church has no place on Hadley University's campus. This is significant because Hadley University was the setting for the first movie, so presumably Dean Atheist has been looking for any excuse to kick Owen Wilson-looking pastor and his congregation off of campus, and he sees his opportunity to do so when someone burns the church down. Now, I'm presuming he's an evil atheist who's been conspiring all this time because it's a PureFlix film in the God's Not Dead series, and that's kind of the shtick. And if I had to venture a guess, this is related to the dean's boiling anger over Owen Wilson pastor converting evil atheist philosophy professor Kevin Sorbo on his deathbed. Instead of, you know what, actually, we'll get back to this one because this is actually going to be relevant later anyway. So, while this speech is being given, we have imagery of graffiti adorning the church, a brick being thrown through a window, and the church eventually exploding. The next scene introduces who I assume is the pastor's estranged brother, because I know his estranged brother is part of the plot of the movie, asking a series of leading-sounding questions that seem to imply that, I don't know, his brother thinks that Owen Wilson pastor may have burned his own church down for reasons? It seems dickish just for the sake of being dickish. Oh, right, his brother's supposed to be an atheist. Carry on. Next comes some rando girl who asks a few surprisingly self-reflective questions like, how do we actually know that our values are any more valid than anyone else's? And she also later says, the whole world knows what the church is against, and it's getting harder and harder to know what it's for. Again, knowing this series, it's not actually going to be that introspective, and instead, this girl's lapsed faith is going to lead to her being afflicted with cancer or something horrible. Because that's a thing that actually happens in this film universe. Need I remind you of Amy from the first movie? While she narrates her first question, we get this shot of this boy looking vacant, but through the magic of context, we can infer that he is maybe upset as the girl walks off. This same kid is seen earlier spray painting graffiti and throwing a brick through the church window, so if I had to guess, she breaks up with him and he lashes out at her preoccupation with faith by blowing a church up. Owen Wilson pastor is dejected and unable to find answers in the Bible, and then we hard cut to this boy who mumbles out this line.
Seems like you're the one much is being asked of this time.
What the fuck did he say?
Seems like you're the one much is being asked of this time.
It seems you're the one much is being asked of this time. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, this boy we will remember as Josh Wheaton, the plucky protagonist who took Kevin Sorbo down a peg with this exchange in God's Not Dead.
It's a very simple question, Professor. Why do you hate God?
Because he took everything away from me. Yes, I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
How can you hate someone if they don't exist?
So hooray! Josh is back, and we're back at Hadley, and this focuses around the connective tissue of the God's Not Dead cinematic universe that is Owen Wilson pastor. And that's on top of Amy being in the first two movies, and even the newly devout convert Martin, the Chinese exchange student from the first movie, who showed up in the second one. So it's around this time with all of these recurring characters and settings that we should maybe be asking, what happened to the Muslim girl who got the brakes slapped off of her by her evil Muslim dad for daring to listen to the Bible on her iPod? She got disowned. She got thrown out of her home. She is homeless. And I checked the IMDb listing for all 3 movies. She doesn't appear in 2 or 3. Is she dead? This is troubling. Anyway, not Owen Wilson is sad some more, and we find out St. James was his father's church, and we find this out because it is not for sale. So now I guess we are to presume that somebody wanted to buy it, and when Pastor Not Owen wouldn't budge, he instead burned it down. Okay, sure. And then we see Not Owen shove Josh. Now at first, I thought this was Vandal Savage, but Vandal Savage is wearing a different colored sweatshirt. I know he can just change his clothes, and these scenes could happen on different days, but these 2 boys look almost identical. But also, Vandal has lighter hair than Josh, and I hate that I'm noticing these details. However, this is juxtaposed with Not Owen being preached to about not responding to hate with more hate, and then this is followed up with a night scene between Pastor Not Owen and the dean of the school, who tells the good pastor, "You don't get to play innocent, you did this." And then the dean of the school just cold cocks him out of nowhere. But I guess all of this is in service of setting up a kind of double entendre. Are characters literally implying he burned his own church down? Or is he saying that he followed God's teachings wrong and God got some rando college student to burn his church down to get him to do some soul searching? I don't know. Everything about this is terrible. Again, if I know my God's not dead, and I do, unfortunately, this will not nearly be that introspective. We then get a shot of a lawyer explaining to someone that something is against the law, presumably the dean for cold-cocking the pastor, or the pastor for assaulting a student, or the dean again for exploiting the destruction of a church to ban said church's reconstruction on campus. Probably that last one. Somebody's drowning, and we're back to the nighttime protest scene, and people seem to be screaming at the pastor for some reason. This seems really odd because those are all pro-Christian protesters based on the signs, which you can see more clearly in the first shot, and I'm not even sure why somebody would be protesting at this point, because this presumably has broken out right after the church goes up in flames. Maybe this is misdirection in the trailer editing, but then you have to ask, what's the point of that? Anyway, we close on this harrowing bit of oblivious self-interrogation where Pastor Dave, which is his name in case I forgot to mention that up until now, asks himself in the ruins of his church, what am I doing wrong? And if you'll remember back to the end of God's Not Dead, this happens to Kevin Sorbo. And then Owen Wilson Preacher does this.
I believe it's God's mercy that brought me here right now.
I'm dying. How can you call that mercy?
Because that car could have killed you instantly. And I'm sure right now you probably wish that it did. But I'm here to tell you that it's a gift. Because the God that you don't believe in has given you another chance. Another chance to change your final answer.
But he doesn't call this. Maybe that's what he did wrong. Anyway, we close on the title, which, whew, thank God, this is still part of the God's Not Dead cinematic universe. Super glad that we're still litigating Nietzsche's God is Dead quote 117 years after the man died. God's not dead. A third time. Take that, Nietzsche.